Welcome to today's session of the IQM Business Club. Here you see a rendering, I think, of the new IQM design. So the IQM part is real. I think the rest is digitally created, if I understand this correctly. It's organized by IQM, and we want to bring together experts from all walks of quantum life, academia, industry, but also investment. Do it roughly once a quarter. We always say virtual or hybrid. The past has been there was one in person, then the pandemic hit. Now we are in a virtual mode. There could be an update at some point that is being worked on. We have one topic. We want to do 1 hour, and we want to be relatively precise with this. It includes always a business update from IQM because that's, of course, always important. But then on top of this, technical presentations and panel discussions. Now, on the next slide, you see an important update. So even the veterans of this club will see one thing is that previously we kept this semi-closed following the Chatham House rules, but now there's a bit of a change of pace, which I think is just reflecting the reality of this online format. Namely, the session will be recorded and uploaded to a YouTube channel. So in this sense, this, I think, reflects already the reality, how we have handled this, but now we make this explicit. When you logged into Zoom here, you got a warning that this would be recorded, the usual one. So if you are now still staying online, you agree that this will at some point appear at the YouTube of IQM. You have no time to protest. 3, 2, 1. You will all be on YouTube. And I think, practically this just means we should follow the categorical imperative 2.0. Always talk in a way that if it appeared on the internet, you would be okay with it. Also, this means that we should be very meticulous with video conferencing etiquette. So please, non-speakers and everybody else remain muted during the session. It takes one cat or one clicky keyboard to influence a lot of people. So please be conscious here of this topic. Now here, today, we want to cover a topic that could probably, that could keep us busy for a whole week. Namely, what do we think is the state of quantum? And so this is very opinionated. Probably a large percentage of the quantum part of LinkedIn is discussing this. But what is really important is that IQM, Open Ocean, and Lakestar, together with many of their collaborators, also I think the LRZ was part of it, put out a report that's publicly available with their very educated and qualified perspective on the state of quantum. Now, that still means that we should discuss and debate it because it's a moving target and it's a complex topic. But this shall be the topic of today. So the biggest goal you can have, the state of quantum. And with that, let me introduce the program of today. And the next slide, you're currently suffering through my welcome. Then there will be a quick business update from the IQM CEO, Jan Götz. And then there will be 3 flash presentations. One by Alex Challens, whose name I'm hopefully pronouncing approximately acceptably, on the report in total, and then on specific verticals, namely life science and automotive industry. And then the 3 representatives of the panelists of the panelist organizations will come to a quick panel discussion, and we'll have closing remarks. Please, everybody, keep your time. Everybody here is very busy, and we want to get to the end with everybody. If there are no questions on the proceedings, then we switch to the presentation of Jan Götz. Please, Jan, take it away with news from IQM.
Thanks, Frank. I always knew that I'm going to be a YouTube star once, so now this is my opportunity. So I keep it brief. So it's not supposed to be a commercial for IQM, but just to give everyone a feeling of where we stand. The company has been growing consistently now over the past in terms of employees, but actually also in terms of locations. So this is a little bit of a pre-announcement, let's say. So early next week, we will have an official announcement that we have an office in Singapore. We have the lucky situation that one of our best employees, Raghu, our head of marketing, has relocated there, and he's now going to explore the whole APAC market from there. If you go to the next slide, the company has been growing, and this is also reflected, of course, in the very diverse nature of our people. So we are very proud, actually, to be a very international team. And you see here all the nationalities, and it is still continuing to grow. And this is actually also very much reflected in the work atmosphere that we have in the offices. Is very international. People from very different backgrounds are coming. And of course, also meanwhile, we are not only getting more diverse on the nationalities, but actually also on the professional background. When we started, we were mainly focusing on quantum engineers, quantum physicists. And meanwhile, we're actually hiring more and more people who have other backgrounds like production, quality management, finance, and so on. So it's really becoming a very diverse and complete company in all senses. If you go to the next slide, I will walk you briefly to a few key announcements that we made since the last business club. These are the first 6 bullet points that you see here, and we will have one slide each. So we can immediately start with the next one. Which is a short update on partnerships. So as you are all very well aware that quantum computing is a very complex topic, and you will not be able to do this alone, but you need strong partners in there on different aspects. And we have actually signed a memorandum of understanding with 2 companies, one more towards the US side, Keysight, and then one on the coming from India, Tech Mahindra. And the idea is that together, actually, we will complete our product offering and then also explore market opportunities globally together. If you go to the next slide, you see a few, let's say, success stories on projects that we have gotten into. I think one is very much also at the heart of Frank, the Open SuperQ Plus, and we are very proud to be part of this. There was a predecessor of this, the Open SuperQ, a great project where IQM was not part of. The project started before the company was actually established, so we had very little chance to participate. But now, of course, we are very happy and very proud to be part of this pan-European project to build quantum computers in Europe. And we will be there delivering, of course, then our part of the technology to the project. And the other one is from Spain. There we are also part of a consortium, which is led by Kilimanjaro. Kilimanjaro is a spin-out from the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. And together, actually, with also a few other partners, we are going to deliver the first quantum computer for Spain. And this is, of course, also a great project for us, which makes us very proud. All right, then if we go to the next slide. One thing that we are also very committed to is actually the education, because we have, on the one hand side, a very strong shortage on talent, but also I think we need to educate the, let's say, leadership and managers of industry. To do this, we have developed a complete program, which you can see here, which contains of several modules, the IQM Academy curriculum, the KQ circuits, which is a design tool. We have certain, let's say, info material like cheat sheets and so on. We are organizing hackathons. So a lot of events that we are doing. If you think some of this is interesting also for you or your organization and you would like to do something there together with us, please reach out. And I think we will find a very good solution to do something together with your company or your organization to really bring quantum to the society, but then, of course, also to the next generation of quantum leaders and quantum engineers. All right, I think we have one more, which is something also that we are very proud of, which is the SQA conference. And we had the first conference last year in Helsinki during the summertime, and we decided, because it was a big success with many participants from all over the world and really the leading experts in the field also participating. So we decided to do it again, and this time it will be in Munich. You see there the date, end of August until 1st September. So please mark this in your calendars, check out the website, and we are looking forward again to a really great setup. We have already a long list of exceptional speakers. So please check out this event, and please apply for one of the seats, which will be taken in the end all. So you have to be fast. I think this is it from my side, unless I forgot something. No, excellent. So please enjoy the business club and enjoy the discussions. And if you have feedback also on the format, please let us know, and we will implement it then in the next sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. And the SQA, I can say also from an academic side, is a very welcome new conference format that our community has been lacking for a long time. Unless there is an immediate quick fire question to Jan, which there doesn't seem to be, I would now right away hand off to Alex Challens, who will then also correct the pronunciation of his name that I've tried to apply, who will present from the Quantum Insider, who will present aspects of the state of quantum study.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jan. Thank you, Frank. And you got my name right. Well done. Today's agenda. So just as background, if you don't know me, I'm the CEO of the Quantum Insider. We provide data and market information on the quantum market. So 3 things I'd like to cover today. Firstly, investment trends and what we're seeing so far in 2023. Second is where we're seeing end user engagement. This is really the focus of the study that we did with IQM. And then thirdly, what we're seeing around national government interest and national security. So I'll jump straight in. So 2022 was another strong year for investment into quantum computing. We saw over $2 billion of capital flow into the market. What was quite interesting, we put out a survey a few weeks ago as well, which saw that people are pretty confident that there will continue to be solid investment into the quantum market, despite concerns around the overall economic environment. There were some pretty large round sizes, of course, with IQM in there. Overall, we're seeing that companies that have shown traction in the quantum market are able to go out and raise larger rounds to go and do bigger and better things, which is quite exciting. The 500 million from Sandbox has been since confirmed from when I did these slides, which is a remarkable amount. And overall, what we're seeing is where people are seeing that they can get financing, they're going after it in this market. And it's really a mission to kind of hoover up a lot of the talent that's available. There's obviously been lots of talk about hype, maybe some overinvestment, quantum winter, all this kind of stuff. And I always try and provide a bit of data on this. So just to draw your attention to, let's say, the 2022 numbers, total investment in the whole VC market is just under 500 billion in 2022. Quantum was still only about 2 billion, which is only about 1% of that. So rather than worrying too much about overhype from the investment standpoint, I actually question whether we continue to be underinvested and there's more opportunity there. 2023 has been off to a good start as well. We've seen $500 million of private capital flow into the market. Obviously, valuations are starting to compress a little bit with new rounds, but we've seen a continued healthy market. You see funding for organizations here from software players, firmware players, but mostly we're still going into the large quantum, full stack quantum computers. The second section I'd like to go through, I'm kind of cantering through this at speed, is around end user engagement. And this is where we did the work with IQM. What we're seeing is that there are really a lot of corporates, and I mean by end users, I mean large corporates who are really engaging with using quantum. So what we did is we track whether there is a company which has mentioned quantum in their press, whether they've got team members that you can see on LinkedIn working in quantum, or whether they are indeed hiring entire operations like at JP Morgan to focus on quantum. So what we're seeing here is a strong mix of end users across Europe and North America. In terms of the end use cases, we're seeing that there's a pretty clear consensus around where the main focuses are. Finances being one of clear interest, and of course, drug discovery, particularly around the potential of simulation. Cybersecurity is an interesting one because we don't necessarily need to build a fault-tolerant quantum computer for this to be relevant for potential end customers. You know, people are starting to engage with the fact that a future quantum computer may be able to crack the secrets that we already are stealing, for example. So I think that's quite interesting to see that even in the survey, cybersecurity came up as #1. It's not technically a quantum computing application, but it's certainly something that's top of mind for enterprises. We also gone a little bit deeper on this as a team. We had a couple of PhDs on our side run through over 100 academic papers where we built our own taxonomy around what are the types of applications. And I imagine this is a kind of similar exercise that's been done at a lot of software and indeed full stack companies. What we're finding is that there are indeed demonstrated realistic examples of quantum computers doing something useful, not necessarily at scale, but really where we're finding the market at the moment is mostly around doing what we call toy demonstrations. That doesn't mean it's not useful. It just means it may be, for example, a portfolio optimization application may be with fewer stocks than may be used at scale in the enterprise. I think this is a very healthy overview at the moment, and we have to remind ourselves how early we are in terms of actually having the quantum computers to test these applications. The third section is really around sovereignty and investment. I mentioned there's been $2 billion, over $2 billion last year that went into quantum technology. Well, you've got over 30 billion committed globally by national governments. This isn't investment that's necessarily been spent, but it's been committed. And of course, last week you had the UK launch its national quantum strategy. So you had another 2.5 billion committed on top of a 1 billion committed in 2014. This is all to say that in contrast to many other technology markets where, you know, government is not putting as much money behind it, quantum is clearly an area where there's accelerating interest. But this also comes with interesting dynamics globally. So one of the things we've been looking at is the read across between the USA and China. The kind of the headline figures here around USA publicly committing 4 billion, but China technically publicly committing a lot more than this, has made people a little bit nervous, particularly in an environment which seems increasingly polarized. So we're just paying attention to the kind of quantum companies that are coming out in China and the different relationships between the two countries. I think one of the kind of underlying considerations here is the importance of building supply chains, you know, in Europe and UK and the US, and why companies such as companies such as IQM are looking to have a full stack approach. We've also seen increasing commitment from national governments around cryptographic systems. So we had the memorandum around post-quantum cryptography, and indeed the US with the Chips and Science Act. Again, I show these because I think it indicates the state of play around quantum, that it's becoming not just a exciting deep tech, it's also something that's closely tied to national security. And I think it will continue to be, even though Europe has a little bit of a different approach to this, it will continue to be something that is top of mind for many countries. So that's my quick overview. Just so you know about us, we provide data on the quantum technology market. I know there's some customers in the room already. If you'd like to learn more, please do get in touch with me at the end of this call. And I hopefully have some time for some questions, but I'm happy to keep to the script.
Yes, thanks a lot. Are there any immediate questions to Alex? Well, if a question goes through your mind later, we can mix it into the panel discussion where he will reappear. But else, I would now hand over to Ines de Vega from IQM Germany, who will continue the story with the life science vertical. And we don't hear you yet, Ines.
Yay, here we go. Sorry about that. So hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today. I see a lot of familiar names and faces. So we are kind of a very close community, and I can see that we are kind of a family. And today I'm going to say a few words about quantum computing and its how can it be used to tackle problems in life sciences. And since the talk is quite brief, I'm just going to cover very briefly some applications which are based on actually resolving the electronic structure of molecules and compounds. And then I'm gonna cover for an application which is based on actually solving an optimization problem, which is the case of the DNA genome assembly. So one of the lowest hanging use cases that we foresee is that of finding the so-called binding affinity, which is the strength of the interaction between two or even more than two molecules that bind reversibly. Like here you see the case of a peptide that is bound to a protein. And it requires the calculation of differences of energies between the bound state and the unbound state. And why is quantum computing interesting here is because electrons tend to form highly entangled states, strongly correlated states, and quantum computers are known to be very useful to resolve these kind of structures or states. Now, the case of chemical reactions is coming next because it's quite more complex than the previous one. And the reason is because to understand the chemical process, you actually need to identify all relevant intermediate and transition states that you have all along the chemical reaction. And this means that you need to search the relevant states among a multitude of electronic and maybe also spin states, and then calculate the relative energies reliably. And these relative energies are going to determine the so-called thermodynamic stability of a reaction, whether this reaction is actually doable or not. Here you can see one example of a very interesting chemical reaction in life sciences, which is that of biological nitrogen fixation, which is the way nature is actually creating fertilizers. And this is made through this catalyst that is called FEMOCO, that you can see here in the picture. And it's a very complex electronic structure. It contains more than 1,000 electronic orbitals, and they tend to be strongly entangled. And what you need to do is actually to solve this structure with a quantum computer that will need to have as many qubits as electronic orbitals. Then the third kind of application that I would like to mention is spectroscopy. And it actually has to do with understanding the absorption and emission properties of, in the future, complex molecules like amino acids, which, as you know, are essential components of proteins. And this can be key for many different applications, like, for instance, cancer diagnosis. But for this to happen, when you want to use a quantum computer, you need to be able to resolve not only the electronic structure, but also the way the electrons are interacting with the electromagnetic field, the way they are exchanging the photons, because you actually need to describe these absorption and emission properties. But what about the hardware requirements? This is, of course, the million-dollar question. And what you can see here is our estimation on the number of qubits that you would need to have in order to be able to resolve the different instances of these three lowest hanging fruit examples that I have mentioned. And as you can see, the first examples would require you to already have of the order of hundreds of qubits, and you need them to be high quality qubits. So you need to be able to have qubits that retain or sustain the quantum mechanical properties properly, and therefore they need to be operated with high quality gates. But most probably you not only need that, but you will also need to apply so-called error mitigation and error correction techniques to be able to obtain a solution which is not damaged by the noise. And then this is when it comes to optimizing the hardware, but it is also very interesting to be able to optimize the software, the quantum algorithm. And this is what I'm going to cover in the next slide. In particular, what we are doing is we are focusing on these electronic simulations, which are fermionic simulations in our jargon. And what we need to do is to be able to perform an optimal mapping between these fermions, these electronic degrees of freedoms, and the qubits between or within our quantum computer. And in IQM, we have recently proposed a new way to perform such mapping, which minimizes the so-called circuit depth, which is actually the number of layers of quantum gates that you need to consider to perform, for instance, the simulation of a single time step within your evolution of a molecule, for instance. And we came up with a method to do this mapping in a quite optimized way with respect to the state-of-the-art method that was proposed recently, actually last year, by Facecraft. And I would like to invite you to check in internet. You can already check the papers by Manuel Algaban and Sri Laxmi and co-workers. Martin is the leader of these projects. He's here today. I think he's going to participate in the panel. But without losing more time with details, let me now cover for the last application, which is not about simulating a microscopic structure, but rather it is related to be able to solve an optimization problem, which is that of DNA assembly. But where is this problem coming from? It's kind of a human-made problem, because the problem comes from the fact that when you place a DNA molecule or assembly within a sequencing machine, it is chopped up in small pieces. There is no other way for it to be analyzed. And these small pieces that you can see here, they just contain a few nucleotides. And then the problem comes when you actually want to come up with the sequence, the original sequence of DNA that you had before. And for it to happen, you need to actually identify the overlaps between these little pieces, between these fragments, so that you can see how to sequence them one after the other. The process that I have just described is called de novo DNA assembly, and it's quite a complex process because it's made without any reference DNA available. So it's really starting from scratch. And this is very useful when, for instance, you want to reconstruct the DNA of an organism that has not been previously sequenced. And it has a lot of applications: epidemiology, RNA sequencing, detecting large DNA structural changes, evolutionary research, so on and so forth. But the problem is that due to the large data volume of fragments that you come up with after you passed your sample through this sequencing machine, the whole genome sequencing, for instance, of a human would take days to be revealed on a cluster. And then this is when quantum computers become key, because even when the problem of rebuilding the DNA, as I'm going to explain, is an optimization problem, it only provides a polynomial speedup. This can already have a huge impact. So it's very interesting already to have quantum computers. But let me say a couple of words about how a quantum computer is going to do that. So this is the quantum approach. So first you start with all these little reads that are just composed of a number of nucleotides. And then you identify overlapping regions between them. And you place every one of these reads within a graph, like a node of a graph. And the overlaps are represented by connections between the nodes of the graph. So those little pieces that are overlapping, you connect them with an arrow. And then the whole problem for the quantum mechanical case is formulated as in a cubo form. That essentially means that a spin Hamiltonian that can be encoded in a quantum computer is built, whose ground state, which is accessed through an optimization process, is actually encoding the solution of your problem, namely the optimal path that goes through all these nodes and only covers each of the nodes once. And this is actually allowing you to reconstruct your DNA sequence. So this guy here is encoded in the ground state. This is a specific path, and this is what you have to come up with through a quantum optimization algorithm. And in IQM, we are tackling the same class of optimization problems with a quantum algorithm that is called QAOA. And for this, we are considering an encoding, namely a way to map the problem into a qubit arrangement or a qubit topology that have been proposed by our partner Parity QC. And this encoding, as you can see here in the picture, it really corresponds to a triangular lattice. So it's actually a co-designed structure that is very useful to be able to implement this optimization algorithm in the best possible way. And what we have now checked in the past months is that this specific parity encoded QAOA can be hardware efficiently implemented in IQM. And what is now in progress is how is this encoding actually being, or how is the efficiency of the encoding scaling with the size of the problem, which is of course very relevant for the application I've just described, and what is the impact of the noise in the solution, which, as I mentioned before, is a very relevant question. And with this, I would like to ask, thank you for your attention, and that's all on my side.
Thank you very much, Ines. Is there any immediate question to Ines while the next speaker is getting ready?
This is Christoph speaking. Just a short one. Ines, thanks for the presentation.
Yes.
Is the co-design and what you have explained to us going to replace the qubits later on? I mean, currently it's a qubit race, as we all know. And my question is this new topology and what you have described good enough to say qubit is no longer the holy grail of the performance of quantum computing? Thanks.
Mm-hmm. I would say that for this specific application, the answer is at the moment no. So this means that we are still talking about qubits as minimal computational units. What we are dealing with here is with a new way to organizing the qubits in a topology that in this case is triangular, which has an impact on the number of layers that you need to consider to perform your algorithm. Basically, this circuit depth that I was talking about before. So this is the co-design idea that is behind here.
Okay, and you believe it could end up in a new parameter, and let's say more or less replacing the relevance of qubits, or will this be a coexistence between co-design and the number of qubits at the end?
I think there will be a coexistence, at least in this specific case. We are still talking about a digital quantum computation, which is based on qubits as a minimal structure. So I would say here the novelty is more about the way you arrange the qubits rather than the fact that, or the possibility of replacing them by other computational objects like resonators, for instance. But this is actually a very interesting idea, which we are also exploring in our company.
Exciting. Thank you, Ines.
Thank you.
Great, thanks a lot. So I think now we're moving on to a representative of Volkswagen, and I think it's Matt Kaiser or Kaiser. This looks like an English language name, so it's probably Kaiser. So about the car vertical.
Yes, you're correct. We, I guess in the move to the US, it changed pronunciation. But thank you, Frank. As he said, my name is Matthew Kaiser, and I am researching quantum algorithms for quantum chemistry at VW or Valve. And so I'm hoping that by the end of this presentation, you have a better view into why quantum computing is relevant for Volkswagen and more broadly the automotive industry and kind of how we approach it. And to start, I guess VW or Valve has been looking at quantum computing since the start of, or since 2016, starting here in the Data Lab in Munich. And the push into quantum computing was driven by three major transformations within the automotive industry. The first is shared mobility, the second, autonomous driving, and the third, electric vehicles. And these three pillars have new challenges that are largely driven by computation. And currently we're pushing the boundaries of our compute abilities. And with these transformations in mind, we focus on three pillars within the, or three pillars of research in quantum computing. The first is optimization, which kind of focuses on that first category of shared mobility, but as well as production and logistics problems. The second, quantum machine learning, is the ultimate goal of tackling the autonomous driving problems, because we need to really master artificial intelligence at scale and need very sophisticated models in order to do this. And finally, material science, which has the ultimate goal of driving the transition to electric vehicles through better performing batteries with newer or better materials. And so at Volkswagen, we really aim to do basic research into the study of algorithmic approaches for these different categories, starting with being aware of the literature and platforms that are available. And once we have use cases from the business units, we aim to tick each of these boxes here in the middle. And first, by understanding classical approaches, maybe what the business unit is already using, but as well as what else is out there in literature. And then on that, we build to an understanding of what quantum methods might be available, and then drive to push those forward or apply them to the business unit. And within this, we could also be evaluating hardware platforms or software platforms that could be relevant for the problem. And ultimately, this has a few outcomes. One is a proof of concept. Another one might be a PR story, publishing a paper, or filing a patent. And this is really about extending competencies both in classical problems, but as well as the quantum expertise. And so in terms of quantum optimization projects, there are a few highlighted here. And so in the middle, the team did a project of using a quantum device, which was the first time that it was used live in a demonstration, where they decided which routes a bus would take for this web summit that was hosted in Lisbon. And then here on the right, and so this was the, I guess, the first category of shared mobility. And then in this third one on the right, we have an example for production and logistics, where a quantum algorithm will inform which color to paint different cars. In the field of quantum machine learning, we have a few projects rotating or pertaining to training models more efficiently. So on the left, we have what's known as layer-wise or layer-wise learning. And this is where you train your model layer by layer. And ideally, this is better suited for maybe NISQ devices, where you can train fewer parameters and reduce the number of measurements required. In the middle, we simulate effective, or try to develop effective quantum agents that will require fewer parameters to optimize compared to the classical, but have the same optimal control performance. And on the right, we're trying to understand how the symmetries in the problem can be exploited to train the parameterized circuit better or even faster. And in the field of quantum chemistry, we have two projects highlighted here, where in general, it's about solving the ground state problem, quite similar to what Ness said earlier. But in our case, we are evaluating the practicalities of, or in one project, we evaluated the practicalities of a recently proposed quantum algorithm. And on the right, we show how to simulate electronic structure problems of a few small systems using a quantum annealer, which also resulted in a patent. Another thing that we're very excited about is our participation in consortia and research partnerships. On the left here is the QAI² consortium, which is a publicly funded project that really focuses on the automotive industry. And on the right is QTAC, which is a cross-industry group of the largest German companies that focuses on many different problems across production and logistics and material science simulation. So both of these fit very well within our research goals and research focus, as well as giving great opportunities for us to help push forward the ecosystem within Germany and help politicians make decisions to shape the field. And I'll mention briefly that our work has created some attention, and so they've been given to us in the past few years. But we're also very proud of the scientific impact that our work is doing in terms of the publications that we've made, which I think most of them are here on this slide. You're not supposed to read all of these, so please don't try. In this time, you can read them after the presentation. But the field is very new and there's a lot of work to be done, and we're really enjoying being a part of driving it forward. And in summary, we just have, I guess, the overall goal of being the first company to provide a beneficial practical quantum advantage. So we started in 2016 as the first automotive team in quantum computing. So hopefully we can translate this experience to actually getting a practical advantage. And compared to, I guess, scientific literature, we might differentiate this in understanding that because the costs matter towards our applications, quantum advantage can come about in terms of ROI and not just the computational complexity of a problem. So it really has to be a practical quantum advantage. And with this, I will hand it back to Frank so that we can get into the panel discussion.
Great, thank you. And it's good to see one's own projects mentioned. I'm not only coordinating Open Super Q+, I'm also coordinating chi-squared. So with that, I think, questions to Matt, we can actually probably fold into the panel discussion. We're also about 5 minutes late. So I would like to invite in our 3 panelists, which doesn't mean they're moving anywhere, just they're now ready for communication. That's Alex again, Matt again, and then I think Martin Leib is representing IQM. And let's go back to our starting point, which was the state of quantum study that has a few kind of bold key statements. And I would like to start with Alex to quote and respond to one of them.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you to the other presenters today. So I think the one that stood out to me was that 10% of respondents are cautious on there ever being functional use cases for quantum computing. Now, I don't think anyone really is fully confident or really knows, but I think there's reason to believe that this may not be quite right. So I think the background to this is at the moment, as we've seen, enterprises are really just starting to get under the skin of what can be applicable and really doing some excellent work to refine the approaches of quantum computing for problems. Indeed, we've seen some theorists question whether quantum computing indeed will be relevant if we can get exponential speed ups. I think what's quite exciting for me is that we are now getting into the stage over the last 3 years where we're scaling up sufficiently powerful quantum computers that we can actually start to test these applications and functional use cases. So mine's a polite rebuttal of one of the statements of the State of Quantum report.
Okay, thank you. I should say that we also published recently a paper that criticizes the quantum algorithm, but we were not as destructive as the one on Grover recently. Our title is a lot more mild. So Matt, you also want to pick a statement?
Yeah, I think the fact that pointed or stuck out most to me was that 31% of respondents had less than 5 years of experience in quantum computing technologies. And I think this really highlights two points. The first is just showing how new the field is. I can't imagine that many industries have such a young, so to speak, in terms of experience, workforce. And so there's a lot to do and a lot to grow, and kind of shows how exciting the space is. And then the second, it just highlights how VW can, I guess, be experienced, since we're not in this category, and have more than 5 years of experience. So hopefully we can leverage this to really make an impact going forward.
Okay, thank you. Martin, any statement you would like to highlight and react to?
Yeah, I would highlight the statement that this hybrid model with on-premise systems combined with quantum as a service is instrumental, and basically kind of reiterating what Matt said before me. We are currently in the foundation phase where the systems actually don't provide us any economic advantage, but now is the time to really educate the workforce of tomorrow. And for that, these systems should be widely available. And this is why we think this hybrid model with on-premise systems, which are kind of available to all users that actually have access to these on-premise systems, as well as quantum as a service, is really instrumental. Another thing that I see is it's still a little bit unclear in the academic world and in general if there will be some economic breakthrough within the NISQ era. And one of the best possible ways to do that is actually put these machines into the hands of many people, because typically then someone can come up with a good idea. And I think that's very crucial for early payoff for a quantum solution.
Okay, thank you. So now, in Quantum, a report that has been published is at the moment, it appears, already something that even can be updated. So I would be interested in trends and dynamics related to quantum applications, maybe starting with Alex again.
Sure, I definitely need to defer to my colleagues who do much more of the detailed work around this, so I can opine on what I'm seeing from my non-technical level. I think the first thing is we're seeing more creativity around the potential of applications. I think, we kind of getting stuck in, the only Groves is relevant, and maybe it isn't even relevant as you alluded to, Frank, with that paper. But I think people are starting to get a little bit more creative around what are the specific use cases for quantum. Indeed, having the actual quantum computers and indeed quantum simulators, we're seeing that people are only just getting to the stage that they are building these applications. So, when I'm going to conferences, maybe 2 years ago, the barriers to building a useful quantum application were pretty high. Like it was quite hard to get hold of a quantum computer you could run a problem on. It's quite hard to understand how to align the gates, and now there's basically software that can do all that, the stuff near the metal. You've got the increasing abstraction, so you can start to do problems. People are mapping out the different relevant applications to different end verticals, and indeed a lot of companies now have simulators that even if you're not having to spend money using the quantum computers themselves, you can start to test things out. So I think to another person's point, we're really now starting to get to the stage of much broader experimentation. And I think having these various factors coming together will mean that there's going to be a lot more rapid progress in the coming years.
Okay, thank you. So Matt, any view on trends from your employer side, you and your industry side?
So I think in terms of applicability and business relevance, I mean, if you think about the entire process of building a car, it's incredibly complex, both in terms of the logistics of the car, but also sales and distribution and shared mobility. So there's so many things within this field to optimize that we're hopeful that quantum computing can help in at least one of them. And particularly when you factor in the transformations across the industry that I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we're very hopeful that we can have an impact using quantum computers.
And what's kind of the application trend according to Martin?
As a co-design company, or as a part of a co-design company, I want to highlight this trend that I'm currently seeing, this maturation of the co-design ideas. So 5-6 years ago, everyone was kind of saying, okay, so co-design is the next thing. It was a little bit inspired by classical computing, because you already saw that if we adjust the hardware to the actual software that is running on it, we can have some benefits. It was a little bit vague, but what I see now is a kind of a maturation of these ideas and getting a little bit more serious, and also understanding, do these solutions scale? And also what we are currently seeing is also ideas to adjust the hardware to the actual quantum error correcting code that's running on them. So a little bit co-design for quantum error correction ideas. Another thing that we're seeing very prominently showing up now is error mitigation ideas, and how to push the quality of the solutions that we're currently having by just using a little bit of more samples that we get from a QPU.
Okay, thank you. So as we want to scale problems up as users larger than hardware is growing, divide and conquer or segmentation approaches where we divide things into small chunks could be a good way to go. At the same point, you could be scared that when you divide them up, you're breaking the coherence, you're breaking the entanglement, I don't know, you're killing Schrödinger's cat and everything will be broken. But that is the academic standpoint on dividing problems. Now, from an application standpoint, what is your expectation? Will this get us closer to advantage? Matt.
So this really does depend on the problem that you're trying to answer. And so rather than just being I guess a blanket method, the applicability and impact is really heavily dependent on the problem. But this is one of the questions that we're trying to answer, and as you noted, is particularly relevant in the near term as we look at these smaller devices. Unfortunately, we haven't published these results yet, so I can't comment on them, but hopefully the members will be able to read them soon.
Okay, so I think your connection is breaking up a little bit. Okay, but I think, yeah, that was the end of the statement. So Martin, divide and conquer, is it a good way for quantum, or is it, you know, putting Schrödinger's cat in danger?
It's a little bit difficult to say, because I would rather differentiate a little bit and look at quantum chemistry problems, where we see actually that the size of the most difficult problems are actually not too far from the number of qubits that we're currently having. So I see in chemistry problem, it's more like that you can do some distillation of the quantum complexity, so to speak, to a smaller system. You can do this with the DMFT or some contextual subspace VQE. The situation is a little bit different in quantum optimization, where the industry standard is actually kind of industry standard problems are on a very large search space, and it's basically a necessity for us quantum hardware developers to break these problems into smaller chunks. And we also see some interesting approaches, some kind of meta algorithms that build on known quantum algorithms like recursive QAOA, also this parity encoding, which Ines presented earlier. And so in this case, I would say we are not cutting the cat into pieces.
Okay. No animals are harmed, dear YouTube watchers, in the creation of this technology. So you've mentioned consortia you're in, and you know, this is also kind of a traditional academic way of working in consortia, but you're in companies. What are your experience, learnings, takeaways from working in such consortia? Let's again start with Matt.
So I guess the one that I'll comment on is the QTAC one, which is within the large corporations within Germany. And whenever somebody asks about this, I always highlight how collaborative it is, and we're very engaged and pushing forward together the experience of quantum computing in industry, and hopefully shifting some of the research into industry and not bearing the burden in academia. But with this collaboration, we, and I hope the other partners are gaining better knowledge of cross-industry problems. Maybe we can have similar ones, or gain experience from other types of problems, but also having a common voice across the companies and industries in Germany to inform a broader federal strategy for quantum computing.
Okay, Martin, the world of consortia and large teams and coalitions.
I am currently on a QLinda meeting, so I'm basically, it's already a start, but I don't want to talk about this externally funded project. So I want to talk about Quast, where we're doing full stack solutions for optimization problems. And the very interesting learning from us is basically from all levels of the stack. So we learn from application partners, really the industry, basically what are the kinds of problems that they want to solve. Then from the middle of the stack, we have a lot of the computational science people that kind of show us also classical ways to do this divide and conquer techniques, and basically supercharging our divide and conquer capabilities. And then we also have in Quast a hardware or algorithm partner, which is very close to the hardware, which also Ines mentioned before. So Parity QC, which we're kind of developing together, optimized ways to run basically the algorithm, so the engine for all of this optimally on our hardware.
Okay, thank you. So then last panel question, and then if you have to leave at 4 and cannot listen to my golden closing remarks, I'm not offended. We still have a lot of modalities and platforms of quantum computing around. What's your perspective on where they are going, how mature they are, how scalable they are? And let's again start with Matt and then Alex afterwards. Martin, of course, has a platform he believes in. He does not get to answer this question. Matt.
There are some cases where algorithms might require different systems in terms of the context of annealing versus digital, but we focused mostly on agnostic algorithms, so beyond that, it doesn't have an impact. And so the hardware that we used is just in the context of what's available for the project.
Okay, Alex, scientist's favorite dinner discussion, a bar discussion, what's the leading platform and does it matter?
I mean, I can tell you, obviously, most of the weight of funding and interest has gone into superconducting. Historically, it's the most, it's got the most focus, the most employees working around it, from my understanding. But we have seen, at least over the last year, that VCs and projects are backing other potential modalities. So we're seeing more recently interest in spin and silicon, and I think that's with some of the a lot of the research that's come out of Australia. And we're seeing. I think we're getting some feedback. So I might shut up.
There's feedback. I think it's coming from Herr Ballais.
But I think my main point was that superconducting is clearly the most mature, but we are starting to see significant funding going around the other modalities as we look to building very large numbers of qubits. But I don't think there's a particular consensus either way around which way's right. I think investors are making their bets across the board.
Okay, thanks a lot. And even though I am firmly in the superconducting qubits camp, I actually agree. So that's it for today's panel discussion. So you got a very informed set of opinions on the status of quantum, specifically from a business perspective. And I would like to thank all speakers. I would like to thank all panelists for the discussion. And specifically, I would like to thank Stefan Rank for actually putting this together. You know, I am here presenting this, but really I'm his talking head. So if I hope you kind of stay, that you'll be able to join next time. And if you have interest in certain topics or in an update as a format, now that we are getting into a learning how to live with COVID situation, we are pondering the format, how to kind of grow it. Let us know. Otherwise, we'll see you in about 3 months. The exact date is about to be fixed concerning people's availability, but you'll hear from it soon. So thanks a lot. Sorry for running 3 minutes over time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.